In this video, I want to show you how to replace the front brake hose on this Ford F-150. Make sure you have some brake fluid on hand because you will need to top off the master cylinder at the end when we're done bleeding the brakes. Having said that, let's get started. To begin, let's remove the wheel. Use a 21mm socket. Unfortunately though, I'll have to use a 22 because my lug nuts have swollen up inside of these chrome caps, and that makes them so that they're not really a 21mm anymore. Regardless, let's take off all 6 and pull the wheel off. With these off, take the wheel off. Now with the wheel off, let's make sure that the bleeder screw actually functions. I like to do this in cases where it's not covered and it looks rusty, because if you can't bleed it, you don't have brakes, and if you need this car to go get yourself more parts, well, you're in a tricky situation. This obviously works, so that's a good sign. That means we can continue. If your bleeder screw has a cap on it, you'd have to remove that to do this, but also most likely it won't be stuck. Next, I'm going to pinch off the brake hose. This is optional, but I recommend it. Obviously, I wouldn't be pinching off the new brake hose, but because this is the old one that we're replacing, I can pinch it off with these special pliers. And this will restrict the fluid through the brake hose so that we can work without losing too much. Next, go on the caliper side right here. You'll see the 15mm banjo bolt that holds the brake hose onto the caliper. I have a collection bucket underneath to catch the fluid. Break this free, and we'll go ahead and remove it. Okay, well, there it is. Sometimes that happens. Inspect it. If it's in poor condition, you're going to want to replace it. Don't reuse one that is not perfectly capable of holding pressure and being properly tightened in there. So inspect the threads, inspect it for rot. This one's good. I'm going to reuse it, so set it aside. As you can see, my caliper is draining in the collection bucket. That's exactly what I want. And you want to make sure that neither of these copper washers stuck onto the caliper itself. In this case, this one's stuck on the hose, so we'll leave that there. And the other one came off when the hose popped off. So it's good. I'm going to wipe off any debris that might be here. And if you did have a copper washer stuck, just tap it off with a little pry bar or screwdriver, and you can pop it off easily out of there. And at this point, this is where it comes in handy to have the fluid flow restricted. Otherwise, this would continue dripping as we're working. Now, if you follow the hose up, you'll see that it bolts onto the knuckle. Grab a 10mm wrench or socket and remove this bolt. With that bolt removed, you should be able to pull this brake hose bracket off. It is clipped into the ABS wire. The new brake hose comes with a new clip, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the ABS wire off of the clip and leave this on the brake hose. Pop this retainer off. Push this vacuum hose aside like this. Make sure it's out of your way. Now let's break this line free. What you see here is rust penetrant. I pre-sprayed it already. It's not brake fluid, it's not leaking. I do recommend spraying it ahead of time so that it can soak in. It's not always the threads that seize, it's actually the line going into the fitting. That's what'll get you most of the time. And for this, I recommend a flare nut wrench because it actually grabs onto one extra side as opposed to an open-ended wrench. This is a 13mm. Let's see if it'll break free. Ooh, it did. Okay, but it's twisting the line, as you can see. So at this point, the threads are free, but we have to break the line free off of the fitting. Hopefully we can. If not, I do have a solution for that. And it looks like mine is not really breaking free, and I don't want to twist the line too many more times. So what I'm going to do is we'll take this locking clip out, and then we'll just twist the hose off of the line. To get this clip out, you can take a little pry bar and just pry it straight back and then to the side. There we go. Just get it out of there. And with that broken free, we can pull this down. The threads should already be broken free. Looks like they're a little bit stuck, so I'm going to hold the threads with the wrench on the fitting, and we can, at this point, unthread the line. Might need some pliers to do this, just because they're a little bit rusty, but hold the fitting, and unthread the hose. Have the new hose ready, because as soon as this one pops off, we're going to need to put the new hose in to limit the amount of fluid we lose. All right, there we go. Make sure you drain the rest of that hose. And now, before we lose too much, I'm going to quickly clean up this fitting. Make sure there's no debris on there. Take the new hose and slide it on this new hose. Do not crimp it with anything. I know it will leak, but we're going to connect it onto the caliper as soon as we can. There we go. Make sure the threads grab on nice and smooth. Now let's put it on the caliper. Take your banjo bolt, put one copper washer on it, slide it through, put another copper washer on the other side of it, and start it into the caliper, and make sure it's facing the right way. You want this cutout here that's angled to face towards the caliper, and you want this groove to be facing outward. Bottom it out, and then we will torque this to 30 foot-pounds. It's important that it's properly tightened. That's it right there. Now let's clean up the residual fluid that's here. You don't want to confuse it for a potential leak in the future. So make sure you really clean this up well. It's very important that your brakes don't leak. And while that's drying at the bottom, let's stick this back through. Grab your wrench. This is most likely going to need to twist a little bit to basically fall into its slot. There we go. The hose has a cutout there. Now you want to take the clip. This clip will have two sides. One that's cut flat, which is this one, and the other one that is more of a circle than that one. So the flat side goes on the bottom, and the one that has two little hooks goes on the top. Pry this in. Make sure it slides down all the way. And with this clip in, we can twist the brake line to snug it up against the brake hose. There we go. I don't want it twisted any more than that. Let's clean it all up. Now don't forget to resecure the vacuum hose if you had four-wheel drive. Now take this bracket, slide it back onto the knuckle, line it up, we'll put the bolt in, make sure this bolt gets tightened down properly. Make it nice and snug, and don't forget to resecure the ABS wire. Now use your 10mm wrench or socket, open up the bleeder screw, and we'll do a gravity bleed. This means letting gravity pull the fluid down, push the air out of the bleeder screw. As you can see, it's bubbling up. That's perfect. Fluid is making its way into the caliper, and then after this is done, we get a steady trickle of fluid here with no air bubbles. We're going to continue to a manual brake bleed. To begin your manual brake bleed, make sure that your brake master cylinder is topped off with clean fluid. Then you're going to want to have a second person in the car pumping up the brake pedal as you open and close the bleeder screw. So after a few pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal and open up the bleeder screw. At this point, air and fluid will come out. Once the pedal has reached the floor, close off the bleeder screw and have them pump up the brakes again. After 2 to 3 pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal once again and open up the bleeder screw. Repeat this procedure until no more air comes out of the caliper and you have only clean fluid. Once you get to that point, close off the bleeder screw and top off the master cylinder with clean fluid to make sure it's full. Once you're done with the brake bleed, go ahead and clean everything off. You don't want to confuse the residual fluid for a potential leak. That would be dangerous if you had a leak and you didn't know. And if you had the boot that covers the bleeder screw, it's very important to put that back so debris doesn't get in here. Unfortunately, I don't have one, so I'm going to have to leave it as is. But like I said, if you have one, put it back. Now let's get the wheel back on. Start on all 6 of your lug nuts, bottom them out, and torque them in a cross pattern. It's important to do that so the wheel can seat properly to 150 foot-pounds. Here we we go, 150 in a cross pattern. There you go, you can double check it if you want. If not, take it for a road test. So there you have it, repair is done. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, don't forget to leave a like. If you have anything to say, leave it in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you can stay up to date with all of our future content. Thanks for watching.